Good afternoon, everyone. This is UnitedTV. My name is Kamal Arkan. Today is May 24th, 2024. And I have Sean Donegan with me. Sean, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Kamal, how are you?
Good, good. So what do we have today?
Yeah. So today we're going to be doing one of our routine sessions. So we have a few items lined up for everybody. Starting off with updates on the HB 350. So if you've been following the past few sessions, we actually introduced it, kind of some of the players who are involved, who it's impacting, and trying to better explain what the bill is actually going to do. So that's one of our topics. We also have updates on the elections, specifically to the race for governor for Delaware. So we're going to dive into those a little bit with each of the candidates' campaigns and where they're standing. And we also do have a brief update on some global news regarding the helicopter crash of the president of Iran, who passed away during that, as well as some updates on the UN. So those are our three main topics that we're going to dive into today, each with obviously a little bit more detail. So I think we're going to go ahead and get started with the governor race updates as our first.
All right, so
And I should have a video up playing right here for us.
we do. Yep.
So yeah, just as everyone is up to speed, we do have the three candidates who are running for governor. So Bethany
For the
Hall-Long.
primary.
Yeah, for the primary so far. So Bethany Hall-Long, Colin O'Mara, and then Matt Meyer are the three main candidates that we are following. As always, there could be other people entering the race even later, but we feel like at this point, these are the three main candidates for the primaries.
Sure. So I think maybe I'll start with a question. What's the qualification for being a governor? So, like from the regular, not being involved with the politics, let's say, how people decide who should be the governor.
Mhm.
So that's kind of important. Why it's important is because, we are doing this show together. From the experience standpoint, so this is your third year out of college,
Yeah,
right?
that's
2 years
about.
third. I have about 25 years actual professional life, actually more than 25 years probably. And then it comes with its own advantages when you have more experience in the right place than the right things. And if we were to get a new CEO for United Medical, and I know we didn't rehearse this, and you probably didn't know, and I didn't know actually I was going to do this, but really
Sure.
just thinking out loud,
Yeah.
what is that you wouldn't be able to apply for this job?
No, yeah, I mean,
Right.
if you look at any job, you either have to have a certain level of education required, or the other thing that's always highlighted is years of experience in that field, or if not, a very closely related one that can be applied.
Exactly. So, and the governor of any of the states is, we mentioned this so many times, it's just being the CEO of a big company.
Mhm.
So they need to have experience. The experience comes with some with time and some with the right places and with right jobs that they do. The other day when I was in Kansas City last week with the Oracle Health, I got an invite. I don't know if I shared that one with you or not, but from the University of Chicago, there's a fellowship program for people in my position with the CEO. And I didn't apply for it, so it's a qualification, I guess, and they are running through stuff from maybe LinkedIn and other stuff.
Mhm.
And then what I see is that they needed like 20 years, like it says on their website, 2 decades of senior level experience. So then what you see with that is even getting the fellowship in a really high level college, you do need certain qualifications.
Yeah.
So now the problem that I see in the Delaware race is there's Bethany Hall-Long. She is with the right background for this position. And there are 2 other gentlemen. Now, I have a horse in the race. I work with Bethany. I'm her co-chair of her finance committee.
Mhm.
So everything that you hear, you need to consider that. So I have a horse in the race. Now, let's park that for a second and then let's just focus on the main issue. Who's more qualified? Qualification has something to do with, again, what's your relevant experience? Like, what have you done before? Are you able to operate this big responsibility, huge or corporation organization? So what I see is just because everyone can run for it, they are doing it. So here's the reason we are actually talking about this today. You have to raise money for these races, and one of the things is it is actually based on how much you are raising. It's an indicator whether or not you are a viable candidate.
Yeah.
So immediately we have two people. One of them put $580,000 of his own money, Matt Meyer. He loaned the money to his campaign. So that's one. The more shocking is a little bit later on, Colin O'Mara, right?
Okay.
O'Mara. So he put $750,000. He loaned $750,000 to his own campaign, and he doesn't live in Delaware. He lives in Maryland. He does have some type of address in Delaware, but he does not reside in Delaware. So I'm a Delawarean. My zip code is 19807. What's the place that O'Mara lives in? Is Maryland. So, and doesn't have any. I think he has money. And then one other thing that I'm not really fully understanding is these people who are working in these nonprofit organizations before. They make a lot of money. I'm in the wrong business. I'm in for-profit business, and then they make more than I, because I cannot loan $750,000 my own money to the governor's race that I'm going to lose. I don't have that much money.
Yeah, so I think one of the things like you're mentioning here is that we even see this on elections across, whatever position they're running for, even if it might be easier for people to follow the presidential elections, you'll see the funding and the correlation to how far they get in the campaign. So if you remember, even during like initial debates, when they might have 8 or 10 people running from a Democratic Party and 8 or 10 Republicans, you'll see early on those ones who have, maybe only $1 million for a presidential campaign, they're just not able to compete long term for the actual position for like the duration of a full campaign to run for that position successfully. And if they are, I think one of the big ones was Bloomberg from New York City when he was running, how much money he actually ended up spending and then didn't win. I think it was like
But he's a billionaire.
Yeah, so a billion, yeah. So
he's a billionaire. He has the money.
maybe
so Matt Meyer says he's a school teacher and he's proud of that. Well, how are you getting? Where are you getting the $580,000?
Right.
Where are you getting the $580,000? I mean,
not from me. I don't have.
I'm glad it's not you. But seriously, putting that much money at risk for someone who doesn't have that.
Right.
I mean, if you put his tax returns and my tax returns, I probably make 12 times more than he does from his legal jobs. Well,
on paper,
dude, like I can't give myself that much loan. How did you do that? I don't know that. And why is someone like Alan Levine, who's a hardcore Republican, is one of your primary financer? So just because you are able to utilize maybe, I mean, this may be a little bit harsh for people to hear, but it's the Jewish connection, because the money is in that community, and then he's able to milk that system, and then he's getting a lot of money, but not from a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's nice thing too to follow the campaigns is the spread of the contribution. So, is it just a handful that are all donating enormous amounts, or is it you have the vast majority of the public supporting you and they're only able to give obviously fractions of what those other 10 might be able to?
So, similar to Omara, Matt Myers, some of the money is coming outside of Delaware. So then it's kind of like making you question like how desperate they are.
Yeah, I think one of them quoted being able to get on television in Philadelphia, right? If I'm not mistaken, one of them said that, you know, they're so confident that they'll be having ads on.
Oh yeah,
They'll be
they're
heard
gonna
on
spend
TV.
about like $1 million on as some
Yeah.
PA origin place. So well, if someone can make this type of a really rational decision, if they can make this type of decision, can we actually trust the state to those types of people? So I mean,
Right.
just think about it.
Yeah, thanks for
If you see the head of the company, head of the state, head of the country is making irresponsible decisions on their own for their own,
Mhm.
can you trust them?
Yeah.
So you know those are important. So then, do they actually not even trust their own people that they are going to get the support? Because it's important how many people are supporting you. It's not like how much money you are getting. Like President Obama in 2008 got most of his money from little donations.
Hmm.
The total was huge, but it was coming from small amounts. So that means something. But then in this case, if that's not the case, so then you are getting a bulk of money. And why is it happening? What's so much into this position that you really wanted so desperately to spend your own and then go crazy about it? So is that like a sign of weakness?
I mean, yeah, it's something to consider on what strategy they have for their campaign. So, I mean, ultimately, you know, you need to have the funding if you want to have this successful chance at the campaign, but also keep in mind that approach that they're taking. Like you're saying, is it just a few select people that have interests that are trying to sway, you know, like I'll support you if you promise to do this, should you be elected type thing, or is it the actual vast majority of the public who are supporting the person because of their
Mhm.
policies or ideas going forward?
So, you know, the other thing that we need to look at this one is from the potential conflict of interest. So your the perception is your donors will actually uh, demand things. So what if he's elected or someone is elected with that type of campaign?
Mhm.
What are they gonna risk? And then are they gonna actually take the risk
Right.
at
The
our own
promises made,
expense?
yeah, promises made
Right.
early on will have to be kept
Right.
at the end of the race.
So these are important things for people to think about. But again, one really maybe important part in this is when you tell me that you are proud of being a school teacher and that's how you made your you know professional life,
Mhm.
and that you have $580,000 to loan to yourself where you most likely are going to lose. I need to know where the source of that money is coming from.
Mhm.
So
Okay, so it's legitimate.
I can loan my own company, my own campaign if I had one. More than that, I have it and I can show the source of that, like where that's coming from.
Mhm.
As a school teacher, how did you make that kind of money?
Mhm.
I need to know that. And if this is coming from different connections, we all need to know that. So because of that, when you see these self-loaned, self-funded campaigns, you really have to take a step back and think about what these people are doing. I wouldn't want to, like, and I'm just saying this very openly, I wouldn't want to be the governor of this state. Well, I'm going to get a huge pickup, okay? And I have to go through a lot of process where I'm not really a big fan of, like a lot of committees, and every decision needs to be discussed by 10,000 people. So inefficient. And at the end, what am I going to get? Well, maybe being the California governor is different. That's the seventh or sixth biggest country or economy in the world.
Mhm.
But I don't want to spend that kind of money to be the Delaware's governor. So what are you going to get at the end? How are you going to pay that money back to yourself is my concern. So that's why we have to take a step back and then question these people, because this money is going to be paid back somehow
Yeah.
by someone. So
Intrinsic value.
that's kind of like important for people to know. Again, I'm going to remind one more time that I do have a horse in the race, and everything that I say, you need to use your own common sense to process it. Right.
Yeah. So that's just our update on at least the financial aspect of the race. I'm sure we'll have at least Bethany join us again before the actual election to get, another round in. But we will be keeping you guys updated on any other information, whether or not somebody maybe drops out, or if there's other updates relevant to any of those campaigns that would impact the election. Obviously, we'll be following that. So we are now going to move on to our second topic, which is regarding the HB 350, and then kind of like Christianity, other players who are in the mix, who this may be more relevant to, who have, your phrase, horse in the race, are going to be impacted by this. And we'll kind of just dive into that a little bit here.
Right. So, well, we can start with the HB 350. Many people are familiar of this bill by now. Pretty much healthcare expenditure is out of control. And it's not in just Delaware, but in many other parts of the country, it's a huge expense. 1/3 of our budget is healthcare related expenses in the state of Delaware. That's a huge number. That's a big number.
Mhm.
We spend money in like mainly two big places. One is healthcare, one is education. So, and this was a really interesting time for me personally, because I actually cut off my ties with the hospitals in 2016. We had contracts with them for one of our surgical practices, and I prior to that I worked with two different hospitalist groups. I was the leader of those groups. One from year 2000 to 2005. The other one is from 2008 to 2012. So I personally know how hospitals work very well. And then our last experience until 2016 was the breaking point for me. And I said, I don't want to have anything to do with the hospital systems. Anyone who's familiar with the Tony Soprano show, that is in the legal ways, it's the hospital system in this nation.
Mhm.
Hospitals are almost, again, I'm just using just kind of having examples of it. I'm not saying they are, but they're almost like a legal mafia. Why? Because they know how the system works. Why? Because they have the lobbies in their pocket. Why? Is because they have money. Like Christiana Hospital spent about $5.5 million in fiscal year 2022 for advertising. So it's the biggest hospital, and maybe the only hospital in Newcastle. St. Francis has its own problems. If you have no other options but go to that hospital, why do you need to still spend $5 million on advertising?
Mhm.
So now going back to my own position. So since 2016, I'm like, you know what, just forget it. But then we have our ACO business. Well, accountable care organizations and value-based agreements and companies like United Medical ACO, the platforms that we created for these, it's depending on our expenditure on healthcare. So my interest and United Medical ACO's interest is to reduce the expenditure of the system. I make money if expense is less. Hospitals are making money if the expense is more. It's that simple. Now, this little disconnect from 2016, maybe a couple of years in here and there, then I realized that we can't really just cut them off totally. I'm talking about the hospitals. Why? Is because, well, they are the biggest expense centers for us. So I need to know, one of the things that insurances tell me, quality metrics and the savings money, stop unnecessary ER utilizations.
Yep.
Stop unnecessary admissions, prevent patients going to the hospital. Why? Is because, not because just they are evil, is because also they are so expensive. So can we actually prevent people going to the hospitals? So then because of that, of course, anything that happens with the expenses and expenditures and the benchmarking of these expenses it's important for us to be aware of them. And then if there's any lobbying happening to support the hospital's expenses and expenditures, we need to be aware of it, and we need to actually understand this from a better perspective. So this bill is, again, it's out of maybe desperation of the state because they cannot control these big hospital systems. So then they're like, well, one more layer, let's try, and then maybe this time they're going to do it. So again, I said this before, I'm not a big fan of these big government type of systems. I'm not. So, but when the state is 30% with Medicaid, another 20% with Medicare, when 50% of the expenses in the state of Delaware is coming from federal and state governments, which is supported by our taxes and it's impacting our businesses. Yes, we are going to actually talk about them. Now, I want this session to kind of also educate the public. So we have our own YouTube show. I actually am a journalist, just so that I have a journalist card. I'm registered in the United States. So I have some freedom in terms of when it comes to telling my own opinion. Then I have more freedom than you have. Still limited, but because I can always use my journalist card. So, well, but we are open book. So we are talking everything in a way that it's not like, oh, you're bad or you're good or you're this. We just educate, we have an intellectual discussions around the topics. So this is interrupted with some not so intellectual actions by board members of the hospital system in Delaware from Christian Hospital, and I was shocked. So I posted our video from 2 weeks ago because we made that short one. And then I wrote the reason I'm posting it. And I thought I did a good job with, being very respectful and trying to be objective. So I see the brother of Tony Soprano message from the board member who's the Christiana board member, George someone. People can, my LinkedIn is not private, it's public. You can go and check it there. This guy puts this like very elementary, like if you are a fifth grader, you wouldn't put that type of comment. If you have a little common sense, if you were a little bit smarter, you wouldn't have put that comment because you assume that people are stupid. That is because you are stupid, because we are going to call you out. Here's how we are going to call you out. I answered his response because he's like, this is nonsense. He didn't even say this is nonsense. He's like, nonsense. You represent a board of a hospital system that's nonprofit, that's generating 2.2 million revenue, 2.2 billion, and you act like a little child. That shows me why these decisions made by the hospital system needs to be questioned. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, did he just say this? And then he didn't come back to my response to him because he understands. Here's the problem. This is why we are talking about it. You can see on the screen, two of the board members are from W.L. Gore. This is a company that does medical supplies and other medical devices. And they are one of the biggest vendors of Christian Hospital. And he works there as a director. Now, I will ask you, you are working for a for-profit organization, full-time getting paid, and you are on the board of the nonprofit organization who's one of your biggest customers. And you freak out because we want to cut the expenses. We want to actually control the expenditures and then streamline them with the benchmarks. And you are making a fool of yourself publicly on LinkedIn. What did you feel when you saw that message?
Yeah. So for this, obviously you can see here the issue is he wants expenses to be high on this one because when the cost is up here, it's gonna have more revenue over here, so it's a, you know, a direct relationship. The more you spend here, the more you receive here. But I think the problem here that maybe we're also trying to address is the fact that they're just assuming that the public, when I say they, I'm referring to the public, they're just assuming that they don't know what the bill is actually doing, and they're trying to maybe take advantage of not having in-depth knowledge of the bill and trying to convince them that, hey, this bill is gonna cut your access to care. This bill is gonna not let you get an appointment. You're not gonna have any of these physicians on hand. And they're trying to sort of like use like a smoke and mirror to say, this is what the bill is all about, and you don't want that, so vote no. But in reality, as you're saying, the bill is to keep an eye on where these expenses are going and see which ones are just totally unnecessary, and why are we charging millions of dollars for some type of service when that has nothing to do with patient care, patient accessibility to appointments, providers, medications. Like you were mentioning, spending, I think, 5 million on marketing, advertising, the nonprofit when you're the biggest one in the state. Like, having this bill, not being able to know the bill in depth, I think they're trying to take advantage of the people who don't have the time to maybe sit down and read the whole bill in its entirety. And that's maybe where that post was coming from, a very short, not thought out, just saying nonsense, this bill is bad, like, you won't want to have politicians controlling your healthcare, like.
But why are you in that position?
Yeah.
Like, you have a huge conflict of interest.
Exactly, yeah. So
I
if
mean,
people did Google his name and say, oh, who is this person that's saying
Yeah.
that? And then you find out, like we're showing you now, who the board is here, all the board members and where they actually work, whether it's law firms, like you're saying, Gore with the manufacturing, other banks who all have interest in this. It kind of makes sense why they feel a certain way from the bill.
they feel entitled. That's the problem. Entitlement. They say, I'm running the show. I'm the biggest hospital systems. I have the money, so I'm going to say whatever I like. But that's kind of really stupid. I don't think you are going to be in that position for a long time. And then also, why do they have 2 board members? If there's no conflict of interest, I volunteer to be on the Christiana board.
Sure.
I need to get paid because unless I have some other benefits behind the scenes under the table, just like maybe W. Gore has, or maybe the others has. What's this guy's incentive, for example, from W. Gore? How much of that incentive is depending on how much they sell to Christiana Hospital? I want to know that.
Yeah.
I think everyone should be able to know that. You know, one thing that, Sean, because it's public, I want to address, one of the registered nurse from, I'm not going to mention the name, but because again, it's public, people can go and see. She says, well, unfortunately, this bill is going to result of budget cuts, and you know, it's going to impact the staffing and this and that. What you know, what's so interesting is we people don't read. We just react, and we have opinions, but we don't have knowledge. We have reactions, we have feelings, but we don't feel like we need to educate ourselves. Why do I say this? Because I'm posting 1 billion, 14 million net profit, and then she thinks that this 2 or 3% or whatever is gonna impact the staffing. Hey, they make 387 million net profit in 2021.
Yeah, I would say
no one is going to lose their job.
they have a little bit of a surplus there to afford to pay.
But she's posting this under my like 1.4 million between Bay Health and Christiana. That means they're not even reading it, and it's just
well, sorry not to cut you off, but also just to further instill that too. One of the slides we have here too is showing you the salaries of the employees, and if she's concerned on not being able to pay the physicians or nurses or whomever, you know, the medical staff, if that's what her concern is, being budget cuts. We just look from 2020, we followed 2021 and 2022, the executives at Christiana Care were seeing enormous salary hikes of, I think one of them had 72%. And just so you know, that's a salary on I think that started in 2020 with like almost 400,000, and they're having a 72% increase throughout 3 years. It's not like, hey, they started at $60,000, now they're up to 120 or something, where, oh, they doubled their salary. These are insane, where even CEO with, I think, is Jazz having over, is it 1.8 or 2.1 million that she's making as a CEO? So
Yeah.
if you're really that
She's at
concerned,
2.3 now.
think about what pay cut she could voluntarily take if she wanted to keep on staffing of, 3 more nurses that.
So, since you brought up the board compensation or the executives, actually, I want to elaborate that a little bit. And one of the issues is, as you mentioned, CEOs. Like, if this was a for-profit organization for 2.2 billion revenue, CEO's salary would be 25 to 35 million a year. So I want to actually just acknowledge that, because it's a nonprofit, but because she probably works 4 or 5 hours a day anyway. So, and she doesn't have, I'm not going to say it, but if you look at the business background of the person, you'll see what I mean. Like, you talk about qualifications for the governor, qualifications for this hospital system shouldn't be just depending on XYZ. It should be like the tangible experience, so, and knowledge. So how I'm not able to just operate in the OR, I own a surgery center, but I don't operate. So people coming and saying that I can run a corporation like Christiana at 2.2 billion with no business education, that's bullshit. And because they have so much money, they make so much money, they don't care. They can make a lot of mistakes, we can't. So here's the issue with the board. Let's just kind of get to know the board. Almost 90% of the board members, they're all working for-profit organizations, or they just work for for-profit organizations and they're now not working. This is, we are not talking about the executives, we are talking about actual board members. And it's not a paid position unless you are paid by different ways, different means. But when we look at the top 20 highest paid people, I'm not going to say just executive because there are some doctors in there, but just highest paid people. Of course, obviously CEO is number one, but then as you mentioned, CEO's base salary went up by 22, 23% in 2 years. Well, it's supposed to be the most difficult time in COVID, and we were just in big struggle, but then you are an established seasoned CEO and then you are getting a 23% increase. Well, not bad. It's still modest. I would not do this job for that money. You need to pay me like 30 million a year for me to be in charge of Christiana Hospital. So that's the reality. If it was not a nonprofit, that would be the case, Sean. So, but the interesting one is, I see Ken Silverstein on this list. He was the executive vice president. His salary goes from 896,000 to 1.5 million, 1,543,000. That's a 72% increase. Now, one part that you may not know, that you are going to find out now, he actually got terminated that year, or he's no longer with Christiana. So someone who's either going to terminate or not going to be there, how did they get 72% increase? So now let's look at another executive who's in charge of nursing, Sharon. Sharon goes from 501,000 base salary to 909,000 base salary. That's a 64% increase. And it's going from not from 120 to 130. It goes from 500,000 to 900,000. This is, and then you talk about nonprofit. What's this based on? Like, is it like they open another hospital in somewhere else that we don't know? We don't know. But another interesting example is one of their executives. He worked only 4 months in the fiscal year of 2021, from 2020 to that year. So he worked 12 months base year, 431,000. 4 months following year, he made 624,000 base salary. So that's 35% from 1 year. But then he got additional $290,000 payment in the following year. in year 2022 and 2022. Now, we don't know fiscal year 2023, maybe there are still more payments because they're about 10 to 11 months behind. These are public filings. So then you see these really outrageous increases in numbers. I'm going to give you one physician example, who's one of the highest paid, but then his salary went up by only 2%. Dr. Joe Bennett, 650 to 659,000. So that means when you ask those doctors to wear their white coats and then go in and support you and then say that this is all about doctors, you are just lying. Because if it was all about doctors, Dr. Bennett would be getting a 60% increase in 2 years. He works like a dog. Like, why is he not getting any increase? He's a doctor, right? So part of that hospital system, he was the head of the board before. Hey, doctor gets only 2%. So, but he has to wear his white coat and go to Delaware and then protest the state. And then just, I'm going to try to avoid any name calling, but this blah, blah guy is publicly telling me that what I'm saying is nonsense. Well, you're a nonsense and you know that. And that's why you couldn't answer my message, because you were probably just a little bit, you were embarrassed. So that's why you weren't able to. Now, when I look at the other board members, like the former CEO of PNC Bank is the head of the board. Well, I actually know him personally, and I don't want to insult him in any way, but he has no business in running the hospital board. So, I mean, he doesn't have that experience. He was just making money by loaning money, right? He's a banker. So is he in the right place? Yeah, probably is, because, hospital's doing very well. 387, I'm jealous. 387 million net profit, I'm jealous. Call me whatever you want. So, but that's what it is. So one thing that I want state to, I know they're following this, I want them to consider is, do we have enough transparency in the system that tells us what these board members are doing? Because there's a huge conflict of interest. There's a huge conflict of responsibility, obligation, where if I'm sitting on Brandywine SBC's board, right? We have no connection in the background. We have no business. So I'm a donor and one of the big ones, and I love animals, and they know that I want to be involved. I'm politically connected, probably. So that's why I'm there. But United Medical has no benefit from this board membership. So, but if we had, then I had to be extremely careful. Just like earlier when I said, when I make a comment about the governor's race, I say, look, I have a horse in the race. So I don't want to just poison you with what I'm saying. I want you to hear my point, knowing that I'm a board member or I'm a committee member. So that's the ethical way to deal with this. But do the state know, or do they have access to the records with the policies and procedures in place for the for these nonprofit organizations, and how they reconcile these conflicts? Now, clearly, what this board member showed us publicly, he is not someone who has a common sense, because if you are not able to control your reaction, because what makes us better than the animals, I guess, why we are more intelligent, is because we can process, we can think, we can sit on our reaction. These impulsive, oh, I'm just going to go there. You are not a teenager. And there's a reason we call them teenager, because they can control, the hormones are controlling them. You, as a grown man, is a responsibility that you represent the hospital and your other business. You shouldn't be making that. But if you are doing it, that means there's really no policy and procedure. If I sign some paper saying that I will be doing X, Y, Z as part of my code of ethics, I would not be acting like that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and especially you're saying that's what who he's representing, like, did all the other members of the board say, hey, yeah, go post that, that reflects what we want to say as a response to, I'm sure it wasn't.
but he's the vice chair.
Yeah, so I'm sure it wasn't discussed prior.
So
It's out there, though, the receipts are out there once you post anything on the internet.
right, so
Can't get
you
it.
can take it back. So
But yeah, so that was kind of our a little bit more in-depth update regarding the finances on Christiana, as well as the update on the HB 350 and why they would be opposing it. And just to reiterate, I think the public should be more informed on some of these things. Like, I highly doubt prior to, this session, even just people in our office, did they know how much money these people at their executive positions are making?
either
Like,
they don't know or they choose not to read.
yeah.
Like this nurse posting, oh, there will be cuts because of this bill. Hey, you have $1 billion net profit in the last 5 years.
Mhm.
You don't have a lot of money. So why are you worried about it? Like, why don't you go and
Don't sweat it. There's plenty,
So-
plenty of surplus there for you.
you know, I was going to give one example, but Susan will be upset with me, so I won't. Go ahead.
Sure. But yeah, so just to close up that topic, though, that was our update. And obviously, as we know, with the bill going forward, we will give you necessary updates as they become available to us. And should there be any more public statements or postings or anything of that nature, we will definitely be sharing that going forward. And then our third topic for the day, not too much in detail on this one, but we did just want to mention, because it might be relevant to some other things playing out on a more global scale, related to whether it's, BRICS, the US interests, in the global economy, trade, and political, foreign relations. So the president of Iran and the foreign minister, both died in the helicopter crash. I guess it was a couple weeks ago now, last week. And I mean, there's a lot of things going on with the airplanes, helicopters, the Boeing and whatnot, but
well, here's the thing, every time something happens in the Middle East, first thing that they do is, oh, United States did this. Fine, we'll take the credit for all the good stuff. But you look at the situation, and this helicopter that's like 40 years old, it's a US made, but we stopped producing them in 1988, or it moved to Canada in 1988, and then it's not being supported or serviced. It's not equipped with any.
what could go wrong?
Yeah, it's not equipped with any of the new technology. And this guy who's supposed to be running, just like, again, it's all, sometimes we make it in a, funny, we say this in a funny way, but, great powers comes with great responsibilities. You, as the head of the country, should be able to make better decisions. If that helicopter came to my parking lot or my helicopter pad, I would not actually ride in that. I'm going to give you an example, and you will remember this. 3 weeks ago, we talked about it. So I think it was back in 2019, 18. I still have the certificate. Office, I work with really good people. So they got me a birthday gift. Do you remember what the story, the NASCAR?
The
So this was before you, but this is because I remember I was in the old house, and Susan usually is leading those things, and they are trying to please me with something interesting, something new. And just the gift is so I can go to the Dover Downs and then ride one of those race cars. So idea is really good, but I have a lot of responsibilities. So I couldn't actually put myself at risk, because my life also supports 300 to 500 lives with maybe more than 300 families. So if something happens to me in that type of setup, I think people who have some respect for me would say, how did he make that type of a mistake? Because I have responsibilities. And it's not just about me. So going back to Iran, this guy has responsibilities. How did you get into that helicopter? And quite frankly, if you were in that situation, why are you being so cocky with the rest of the world anyway? I told you guys were doing the nuclear weapons and this and that. What happened? Like, looks so miserable. And Turkey, again, when I was talking to my dad today, he's like, we try to help everyone. I said, stop doing it because not everyone deserves to be helped that way. So because we sent, the Turkey sent the Turkish drones to help them because they couldn't locate the helicopter, then the Iran didn't even thank Turkish government. And when there's a thank you post on Twitter, on X, they include like 25, 30 different countries' flags, missing to Turkey and Azerbaijan, two Turkish, countries. But Turkey did way too much, and I think they really need to think about who they're helping. It was eye-opening to see how bad Iran's situation is in this. So they're really desperate. Like how we are putting them in a way that, oh my God, this is like they are kind of a threat to us. Well, the president is riding a 40-year helicopter that's not serviced in the last 12 years. That's embarrassing. Now, I'm not making fun of the situation, but it is, in a sad way, it's funny
Yeah, thanks.
because you are smiling.
Yeah,
quite
and it's, like I said earlier, what could go wrong? Like, how can you be shocked that, wow, a malfunction happened after all this time?
Right. So you cannot blame others if you don't take care of your own business. You need to lock your door. You need to set up your alarm. So then you are not going to blame the person who breaks into your house,
Exactly.
right? So you have to take responsibilities and accountability for your own actions. It's a trouble. It's going to be some troublesome time for them, for the region. But the reality, we are looking at it, why this happened and who would be responsible. And I don't think we have anything to do with it. So if you don't take care of yourself, you are gonna get into those types of situations. So there is no one other than yourself to blame. So was this our last topic today?
Yeah.
Or do we have more?
No, that was our last topic. I just have to make a side note to see if those tickets were non-refundable to the skydiving trip we got you. It sounds like you're not going to be.
Well, I could
skydiving
actually, no,
anytime
I'm not gonna probably do that either.
But no, yeah.
One of my one of the friends of my sister, the young guy died from skydiving 4 years ago. He had a family, a little young daughter, I think 9 years old at that time, destroyed the entire family. For what? I mean, what like you're gonna just do skydiving? No, like look, I mean, we all take risks, but there's a calculation goes with it. It has to be a calculated risk. If you are just reckless, you shouldn't take some of these responsibilities, or you shouldn't just ruin other people's lives. It's not just like the person who's gone, but what happens to the rest. So they live with that.
Yeah.
So
I'm always kind of, so I stay away from spicy food. I calculate all my risks all the time.
right.
Gotta be careful. But yeah, so that was our third topic for today, just getting a quick update on some of the global foreign news out there. So next week we do have Senator Stephanie Hansen joining us for our Friday 2 p.m. session, and then for today's 3 p.m. we're actually going to have a premiere giving a highlight on some of the wellness webinar topics and highlights of the last 2 or 3 sessions for our diabetes wellness webinar. And then next week, we should have our multivitamin use after surgery for the bariatric.
And Dr. Rinaldo is going to be with us next week. Well, this weekend, Monday is a Memorial Day.
Memorial Day, yeah.
Well, please drive safe, enjoy your long weekend, and happy Memorial Day weekend.
Yes, we'll have the barbecues out there probably.
Yeah, stay away from crazy people at the barbecue. So we'll see you next week. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.